Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another thing where I talk about things. Today, I would like to talk about Civilization games, Sid Meier's Civilization. Or I believe that they were Sid Meier's Civilization until Civ 5, because I think that the original guy quit working on it. But anyway though, these video games, I started recently playing a Civ 5 game with Foss and Isu from the stream. And so I've been thinking about Civilization and the differences between Civ 4 and Civ 5. I never really played Civ 1 through 3, but I've heard some amusing stories about some of the history of the game. They're fun games. If you're not familiar, they're basically like little country builder sort of thing. What you do is you start with one little city, and you're like a city-state. You know, you settle down, and you're off in the beaches, or the mountains, or the plains, or whatever. And you gradually grow up, and you expand, and you plant down more cities, and then you run into neighbors. And the neighbors are all controlled by AI or by your friends, and you can negotiate with them, and you can trade goods, and the object of the game is to win by any number of different specified victories. You can win by domination, you know, world conquest, which is like you build up an army and then you go and you just burn your neighbors to the ground. You can win culturally, which is different between Civ 4 and Civ 5. In Civ 4, it's very straightforward. All you have to do is build up 3 cities to where they reach legendary culture, and you can do that by building, you know, churches and the pyramids and world wonders and things like that. You build all kinds of pretty things in your cities, and they grow culturally, and there's a lot of benefits to growing culturally, so you'd want to do it anyway. Another way that you can do things is if you reach, I think Mars is what it is. The first person to reach Mars wins the game. And you can do that with technology. You actually have to research different technologies, and you play through various eras. So like you research fishing, you know, whatever, and then you can go fishing. And you do that way back in the ancient era before recorded time. And eventually you research writing, and you start recording time. And then, you know, you can write stories about your enemies and how dumb they are. Let's see, and then there's also a diplomatic victory, which people very rarely win unless the AI just stupidly votes somebody to be the winner. This is very difficult to do. But a diplomatic victory is you build the UN, and then you convene on a vote, and you say, I vote myself the winner of the game. And if everybody agrees that you won, then they all vote, yes, you won, and then the game is over. Very rarely happens. Like, people don't tend to want to vote to lose the game. It's sort of an uncommon thing. They changed that in Civ 5 to a way that makes more sense. But I'll get into things on that later. What else? Oh yeah, and then there's also like a score victory. There's a turn limit, so when you get to the end of your turn limit, like the game will just look at everyone's scores and it'll go, oh, you won because you have 2,000 points and everyone else is lower than that. You win! Winner, winner. Yeah, so Civ 4. It's a fun game. Very addictive game. What you have to do, like... What happens is that every single turn you're doing something, and then at the end of the turn you hit end turn, and something good happens, you know, like you produce a soldier, or you get more culture, or, you know, stuff goes up. So it's got this psychological feedback loop. It's very active with that, and the bigger your cities grow, the more you get that. Like, every turn something good is happening. And so you just keep playing, because it's like, oh, I gotta get to the end of this turn, because something good will happen. I'm gonna get to the end of my research, you know, and I'm gonna feel real happy about that because I'm gonna research liberalism before everybody else. I'm gonna get a reward. So the whole game, it just constantly rewards you for playing, and it's so addictive that as a joke at the end of it, when you get to the turn limit or when you get to a victory, there's an option that just says, wait, just one more turn, and if you click it, you just keep playing and you keep getting that reward feedback loop. Yeah, so it's a fun game. But more fun, I think, is all the little historical characters in it. It's full of like really interesting gimmicks to keep it dynamic. Like you can play as different world leaders. Like there's Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, Hannibal, Napoleon, Gandhi, Gilgamesh, Hammurabi. Like there's just all kinds of different, you know, major historical names. Like Civ 4. A lot of the people in it are incredibly recognizable, and this is really interesting because a lot of those historical characters, they're very highly romanticized. I mean, they've written plays about them, they have all these interesting stories about them. So when you go to play against them, the game tries to make their AI function in a way that intuitively you would think would work. Like, for example, if you're dealing with Napoleon as an AI, he's very aggressive. Like, he'll frequently call you up on the phone, be like, hey, give me $2,000. And you'd be like, no, Napoleon, go to hell, go to hell. And he goes, oh, you give me $2,000 or we're gonna go to war. And then you get mad and you're like, oh, Napoleon, you're gonna get such a thump. You know, I swear to whatever god we're worshiping right now. Let me check. We're not worshiping a god right now, but you're gonna get beaten up. I'm gonna go thump you. And then you go and you go to war with Napoleon. So he plays like that, and then like Gandhi will be very peaceful. Gandhi just builds up, you know, population. This is his thing. He's just trying to overpopulate his country. That's what Gandhi wants to do. But there was actually a glitch in one of the early games with Gandhi, where apparently there was a rollover error or a spillover error, so that like Gandhi was supposed to be super intensely friendly, and if you did a friendly action with him, then it would like actually spill over into the high level of like furiousness, anger. And so if you were like, "Hello Gandhi, let's make friends," he would become irrationally furious with you, and he would stockpile nuclear bombs. So like you'd be at peace with Gandhi, and he would just stockpile a bunch of nuclear bombs, and then he would nuke you because Gandhi just hated you. So he was one of the most insane civilizations in the game, thanks to this glitch. This is one that I've read about. And that's actually, they carry that over into later Civ games. So that in every Civ game, Gandhi is actually pre-programmed to stockpile nukes. And he behaves correctly now, but Gandhi is one of the Civs that will just always like to stockpile nukes. You know, no particular reason. He just really likes nuclear bombs. Gandhi, it was kind of a joke on a past mistake that they made. But yeah, so that was, it's a fun game, and then they went over to Civ 5, and this is one of these things. I feel like it's very emblematic of just the new generation of gaming in general. Is you start off with these old, during what some people kind of call now is like the golden age of gaming, which was like, man, I guess like almost a decade ago now. They would make a lot of like really amazing games like this that would develop these cult followings, and nowadays they release sequels to these things, and they will have less content. I mean, like, they'll be prettier, they'll look prettier, but so much of the budget goes into making the games look really pretty and looking really marketable that when they ship the thing, you get it and it's like super disappointing. Civ 5 came out and I got the vanilla version. Like, I picked it up right away because I loved Civ 4 just to death. So I picked up Civ 5 and I brought it home and I installed the thing and I was all excited. You know, I think I got the pre-order package, so I got a bunch of the leaders that you could, had like Babylon and everything else. And I started the game up, and they had cut like so much content, and it wasn't even really the same game anymore. It was a completely different game. Similar sort of in nature. It's like a little city builder game, but much slower. In Civ 4, the way that things worked is that various cities were all kind of independent. I mean, they cost money to maintain, and if you ran out of money, then that hurt your research, and so you had to be careful mostly about managing your finances. If you knew how to play the game really well, there were a lot of tricks that you could use that would stack up over time. And so like even now, like I play with my friends, and Civilization is it's like a friendship ruining game. It's a lot of fun. Like my friends all really like it, but nobody likes to be near to me. I have a story of one game, for example, where Binlaw, one of the guys in the gaming group, he was playing on settler mode. There's like various modes, and settler mode is like the easiest mode. The easy modes of the game make it to where you build culture faster, and your warriors are stronger, and everything is cheaper, or you know, just whatever. You get like more happiness, everything's going better for you, more production, you build things faster, you research faster. And so Binlaw's sitting over here on settler mode, and I'm sitting over here, I think I'm on like one mode above normal. So I'm actually like sitting on a hindrance. And the game just sets me down in like the worst possible place. It's like you are in a desert on the coast. So I was in a coastal desert. So I kind of like look around, I'm like, well, I got some hills, I got some salt water, and I guess I'm gonna mine these hills for salt. And that was my civilization. It was awful. I didn't grow very much before I immediately stumbled into Binlaw. Like everyone else was off doing their own thing. Somebody wound up by themselves in this like really expansive, like lush, beautiful area, and they were just like growing out of control. No one could stop them. There was like nobody was within arm's length to like prevent their expansion. And then like Binlaw was over here sitting on like 3 cities and was just building every world wonder in the game because he wasn't really bad enough at the game that he deserved to be on settler mode. I don't know why he chose to do this, but he was just sitting there like building every world wonder in the game. It was like, oh, this technology is researched, guess I'll build its world wonder. And he just kept doing that. And the way that Civ 4 works is that when you build world wonders, you get major boosts to culture, and culture is what causes your border to expand. The more influential your city is culturally, the further the borders go out. This means that if two cities are close together, you can actually smother that city by just having your border expand into their territory. And eventually that city just goes, you know what, we're actually part of this country. And then you just absorb that country. So I'm sitting here next to Binlaw, watching his borders just rapidly expand in my territory. And I say to myself, like, okay, this is going to be a military game. My people have salt. My people have salt. And apparently they're not satisfied with salt. What they really want is the statue of Zeus and like the pyramids and all this other fantastical... Like, there's a freaking utopia just next door. I have to burn it to the ground. So I built up a bunch of troops and I sent them over to Binlaw's land. And you get major military bonuses when you play on basically easy mode. I mean, aside from all the tech advantages and everything else. But I walked into his land and I found a copper mine. And at first I think he wasn't too upset. But I got to the copper mine, and I think that he hadn't expanded out to find, like, iron or any other source of metal. So I went to his only source of metal, and I just burned it down. And then rage quit. Boom! He just like, logged out of the game. It's like, I'm not coming back! And then what it does is it flips the game over to the AI control, and the AI cheats. So Binlaw, like, rage quits. And then he ends, like, we end turn, and the next turn the AI spams up, like an insane settler mode military. So I'm just sitting there and I'm like, oh, well, now I'm suddenly outnumbered. And the military that I'm fighting has, like, obscene advantages over mine. Wow, that sucks. So we tell Binlaw, I'm like, hey, Binlaw, you know, the AI just made you invincible. And then he goes, oh, okay, and he comes back. And I can't remember what happened after that. I think I demolished the road that was connecting the demolished mine to his city. And it was like a road that was connecting one city to another, and then he got mad and he rage quit again. Like, I don't know what it was. I think it's because I've beaten people in that game enough times that he decided that, like, my underwhelming military was just unstoppable despite all his advantages. He was just like, I'm gonna lose. Like, Greg's gonna just pillage everything and then I'm gonna die. Yeah. But yeah, people get really sour when you play that game. The first time I introduced it to Kenza, actually, I just kind of fooled around and let her get used to the mechanics of the thing. And I told her, you know, I gave her advice on what to do. And I entertained myself throughout the game because in Civ 4 you get access to, like, pirates and spies and things like that. In Civ 5 they didn't have that for a while. Those are expansion things. But yeah, in Civ 4 you had spies and pirates and stuff like that. And so I just kind of let Kenza build up her city and do her thing. And she's like, how do I do this and how do I do that? And I taught her how to play it. And every now and then, like, I would just get bored and I would send, like, pirates to her shores. And it wasn't like a massive, like, oh, an overwhelming fleet of pirates. It would just be like I would send one pirate to her shore and then just have it, like, pillage tiles. And then she would be freaking out. She'd be like, oh my god, there's these pirates here. What do I do about these pirates? And I'm like, oh, well, you have to build a frigate. And she's like, oh, where do I build a frigate from? I'd be like, well, you go into your harbor, you build a frigate, and then when the frigate comes out, you go and attack the pirate. And so, like, I was doing this for a while, and then I would, like, have spies go to her town. And she's like, oh, my people are rebelling. And I'd be like, oh, yeah, that's the spy, probably from the AI. Because we had, like, one other AI, and it was between me and her. And so I was like, oh, yeah, probably the AI is messing with you. So what you have to do is you have to go and you make a spy. And I was just kind of, like, lightly prodding her, all over the place. Because there's all kinds of really nasty ways that you can sort of disadvantage your opponents. Things that are very subtle, like sneaky stuff. So I was using, like, really, really sneaky tactics to just kind of, like, cause trouble. You know, I wasn't really hurting her too much. It was more that she didn't know how to play the game that was keeping her down. And so, yeah, so stuff like that would happen. I'd be like, oh, well, the way you counter that is you build a spy, and then you set the spy down here, and this is what this was. Give me an opportunity to explain some of the other mechanics of the game. And so eventually, I was like, okay, it's time to go to war. So I contacted the Civ that was next to her, because I had, like, really good relations with this Civ. I'd just been sitting there, like, not really doing anything to it, just trading, playing peacefully for all this time. And I was just like, hey, Ahsoka, you should declare war on my girlfriend. And he goes, okay. And so he declares war on Kenza, and she's like, oh no, this neighboring AI has declared war on me. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, we better go to war, and we'll go ahead and stop him. So you and me, let's team up on Ahsoka, and let's crush this guy. Because we were on either side of him. So This is actually I think this might even be in the Art of War, this whole concept of send your opponents to exhaust themselves one country away from you, and then you just move in and take them after their forces are down. So like Ahsoka sent all his forces to go attack Genza, and I was like, yeah, so what you need to do is you build up an army and explain this. And she was fine. Ahsoka actually didn't take any of her cities. But I just moved in behind her, and then, you know, it saved the day as this other civ. And I just kind of like swept in, and I conquered all of Ahsoka, and I wiped him off the map. And I was like, okay, it's just you and me now. So your true nemesis is dead. Everything's fine. And so after that, like I just kind of told her what to do, and she stalled out sometime around the Renaissance era, because what she started doing is she started building up a giant military in preparation to destroy me. And I was watching her do this. I'd never seen anyone build so much military before. And it was funny because I was asking her, I was like, what is your research at right now? And she's like, oh, how do I check that? And I'm like, well, if you look in the upper left corner, it'll tell you what % of your income is going to research. And she goes, oh, it says 0. And I'm like, oh, that's because you have like 100 military units and you're paying for them. Like, they all need a salary. So that's why you are stagnating right now. This is why you're not getting out of the Renaissance era. So I got all the way to like nuclear bombs. I was sitting around with like mechanized infantry and modern tanks, and Kenza was sitting around with like musketmen, and she couldn't get out of musketmen. And I was like, well, you're gonna have to delete some of your military. And she's like, well, she goes, but they're guarding my cities. And I go, yeah, but I have to warn you, like, I could really just wipe them out really easily. It's not gonna be very challenging. And so she just refused. She just continued to build troops. She's like, well, it's fine. I'll just build, so I don't need to. So she just kept building troops. And so finally, I just nuked her. I just launched a nuke at all of her troops. And this was terrible. The bullying I was doing before was all bullying for sure. And then this was just okay. Here's the coup de grace. So I nuked her, and I think it was like just before a space victory or something like that. Anyway. And the game was about to end, so I was like, okay, well, here comes the nuke. And she's like, oh, no. And I nuked every city, I nuked everything. She's like, my babies. I'm never gonna forgive you for this. How could you? But you hear similar stories. You play with your romantic partners. Foss and Isu, they play these games all the time. And Foss is like, oh, you're gonna win, I'm going to nuke you. And then Isu is like, oh, don't, if you nuke me, I'm not talking to you for a week. And you get in these conflicts. It becomes more social, friend-losing games. But this is why I love it so much. This is why I like Civ 4 so much. Civ 5, though, like I say, when they switched over to Civ 5, they cut out a lot of stuff and they streamlined a lot of things. I think to try to make it more accessible to people. Because Civ 4, there's so much that you can do to gain an edge over people. Like if you really know what you're doing, and you understand all the civics, you will just steamroll people. I mean, I regularly get into, like, the game tells you what year it is, and so you'll get into, like, the 1700s, and I'll be sitting around, like, with McDonald's and stuff like that. Like, I'll have, like, mini malls and things like that, and I'm like, oh, I tore ahead. I know what I'm doing. Because you build all the right tile improvements and things like that, and really just spruce up your cities really well, and you just take off. Especially if you get to be really huge and you get access to a ton of important resources. Civ 5, though, what they do is it's all about slowing you down, I think. This is how I feel. Because in Civ 4, like I say, each city had its own happiness. So you conquered a city, and it would be mad for a while because it belonged to another civ, and the residents didn't belong to you. And that also meant that if they were close to the borders culturally, that there would be all kinds of riots. They would be a really non-productive city. So they'd just be like a drain on your income, on your money. And so you had to work really hard to actually get them to be culturally relevant to your own society. Or you just had to keep moving and you had to conquer all of this nation. It was kind of like conquering another person's nation was really kind of the only way to stop the culture conflicts. Because if there was no nation for them to go back to, then they really couldn't fight about, well, we're technically Vikings, like how dare the Malinese try to take over our land? Just like, no, there's no Vikings anymore. You're all Malinese now. Can't return you to anybody. So, a bit of ruthlessness. But Civ 5 has a global happiness. So what happens is if you conquer a city, it makes your entire nation sad. And this was so infuriating. Like, I was just livid when I found out that this was a thing. Because I first discovered this, I went to war with a civilization, or they went to war with me. Early on, especially, Civ 5 AI was it was just trash. Like, they would go to war with you over the stupidest things. What Civ 4 tried to do is they tried to program a particular personality. You know, like I say, Napoleon would be like Napoleon, and Gandhi would be like Gandhi, and Genghis Khan, you know, would be like Genghis Khan. You could tell if you knew about the historical character, kind of how they were going to behave. But with Civ 5, they tried to make the AI play more like humans. So the AI would do things like, you could check the diplomacy, and it would tell you, like, you built a world wonder that we wanted. And then they'll go to war with you for the world wonder because they want the benefits of the world wonder. Or they'll say, we think you're trying to win the game in the same way that we are. And that was, like, so incredibly meta. I wasn't used to that. Where the game's like, oh yeah, you're building up a large military. I'm a military civ, so therefore you're trying to win the game the same way I am, so we are enemies. I'm gonna kill you. And they would just declare war on you. They'd march down to your borders and you would have to fight them off. That was really frustrating. So you get into war like this, where like Egypt declared war on me. I remember specifically it was Egypt declared war on me. And I pulled in like the Mongols or something, you know, and I was like, hey guys, help me out with Egypt, you know, we'll be war buddies and then we'll be friends. Because in Civ 4, that was something like, you know, the war civs love to go to war. So, you know, you go to war with them and then you were good friends for a long time. You could open up trade routes, you know, this mutual conflict brings our countries closer together. So I went to war with the Mongolians as my allies, and I crushed Egypt. I took them over, you know, but not through military conflict. What happened was Egypt pulled up the diplomacy menu, and they were like, hey, I will give you all my cities but my capital if you agree to let me live, because they were losing that badly. And I said, oh, okay. And so I accepted all the cities, and because you get a loss to happiness for being overpopulated or for having too many cities, immediately my entire country fell into total and complete anarchy. Like I had rebels like bursting up out of the capital. This was basically like I won the war and my troops were coming home, and then there were riots in the streets. Like everyone was pissed. Like I wasn't even the aggressor in this situation. I was the defender. They attacked me. I took their territory. My capital collapses into a fit of rage. Like, oh, no, we wanted to stay at war with them. Oh, we wanted to sacrifice our men and children. We wanted to sacrifice our nation's kids forever in this bloody conflict. What is wrong with you? They're just, like, furious. And you lose, like, when they're that unhappy, like, you spend so much time trying to, like, repair the damage being caused by all these, like, rebel forces that you wind up, not really being able to progress very well, and the game just hurts you. It's like, oh, you expanded too fast, you did too well, you played too well. So, as punishment for playing too well, here's your entire civilization crumbling into dust right before your eyes. So that happened, and I was really mad because I didn't think that winning a military conflict was going to absolutely cripple my country. I thought, you know, in Civ 4, that was a big deal. Like, if another civilization gave you almost all of their cities for free, I mean, like, that saved you so much time. You know, the only thing that saved you more time than that was if they pledged to become your vassal, and then they belonged to you, you know, they were basically your civ, but they got to be, you know, autonomous. But, I mean, that was one way that I used to play with friends every now and then, is I'd be like, alright, I don't want to destroy you. CF becomes vassal, and then CF would be like, no, CF doesn't become vassal, and I'd be like, CF becomes vassal! And CF would say, no, CF doesn't become vassal, and I'd declare war on him and, like, take a city, and I'd be like, CF becomes vassal! And he'd be like, okay, CF becomes vassal, CF becomes vassal. And so CF he'd basically become, like, my territory, but he could keep playing in the game, it's just that I was in charge. It was better to willingly become my vassal, because you can actually get out of that. You can choose to leave vassalage if you agree in diplomacy, but if someone forces you through warfare, then you're stuck. So you know, like, as a war concession, it was, you know, it's just like, become my vassal or I will burn your capital. And like, oh, okay, fine. But I have to. Yeah, so you would expand, though. Like, in Civ 4, you would expand, and then you'd have all these cities. And it might bankrupt you if you weren't careful. But if you knew how to manage Civ 4 really well, then you'd be fine. But with Civ 5, what you find is that you really need to slow down and only take in enough cities as you can manage the happiness for it, because the happiness is going to be the thing that kills you. Every time you take over a city, that city is mad because they belonged to another civilization previously. And also they're mad because of their population. So what you have to do is you have to take that city, and then you have to rebuild that city, and you have to, like, you know, give them little kisses and hug their boo-boos and tell them they're all bright and talented individuals, and you really want to see them succeed in life, and they feel all good about themselves, and then you can move on and you can kill their neighbors. And then, you know, then it's okay. But until you do that, like, if you just accept a bunch of cities from a civ that's losing, it will destroy you. It's a huge disadvantage. You should never do it. The game's trying to slow you down. It's trying to prevent you from having rapid growth. It's trying to discourage military play. It's trying to... I feel like it's just trying to exert a lot of control. Probably way too much control. It's just like... You know, you couldn't get to... I mean, realistically, playing Civ 5, you can't get to the size that China was by the Renaissance era. Like, China was pretty massive. But if you got as big as China in Civ 5, basically everyone would be unhappy and you would be in a state of constant collapse. Like, you couldn't do anything. But anyway, though, after I took over Egypt and I was having, like, rebellions left and right all over my continent, then Mongolia declared war on me. And I looked at them and it was the same thing. It was like, oh, we're a war civ and we think you're trying to win the game the same way we are. And it was just like, the AI has denounced you. And then the AI went to war with me. I was just like, what? Like, how does this work, like, diplomacy-wise? Like, how do I make friends with the AI if they're gonna declare war on me because they think that I'm trying to win the game? Like, is that not, like, weird? Is that not, like, really meta? Like, it's not very intuitive. And especially what was really weird about it was that Mongolia wasn't stronger than me militarily. So they weren't in a real position to win. I mean, in spite of all the attacks on my soil by my own people, who were mad because of the military conquest, I was also sort of dealing with just like a bunch of half-assed attacks from the Mongolians. And I wiped them out. I think I wiped them out, and then another civ went to war with them and then took their capital or something like that. And then I got to another stage of weirdness in Civ 5, where I conquered that capital. I was like, okay, here I am. I've conquered all of Mongolia, except for the stuff that this other civ took. Surely this person will like me because we had a mutual conflict, right? Well, no. I got to their borders, and then they said, oh, you're a warmonger. We don't like warmongers. They declared war on me. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to be in perpetual warfare, just constantly dealing with unyielding sadness from all these victories I'm having. Like, I'm just going to keep growing, and my civilizations are just going to continue to be pissed. So then what happened was I actually marched down, and I got to Mongolia's old capital. And I liberated the capital, and it goes, hey, this capital used to belong to an AI. Would you like to give their capital back to them? And I was like, oh, like... I'll bring Mongolia back into the game, and then they'll probably be really grateful for me, and I don't really need more cities. All these ones I have now are pissed. So I was like, yeah, bring them back into the game. And so I brought them back into the game, and then they denounced me, and then they declared war on me. And I was just like, what? What was the point of that? Like, why? I revived you. Like, I brought you back into the game, and the AI was so meta that they declared war on me because I was winning, and they didn't want me to win. And I was like, this is stupid. So I just burned them to the ground. I took over their capital. I think you're forced to hold capital, so I just had to take over their capital and hold it. And I was like, well, alright, you get out of the game for good. It's so annoying. But the AI is just very poor, Civ 5. That said, though, Civ 5 is much easier to learn, partly because it slows you down so much. I mean, like, when I play Civ 4 with people, I remember, like, one of the first times that I really played with a larger group, a lot of the guys that were playing with me, they were really stunned by how quickly and how monstrously I would expand. Because I would play something like the Zulu. And the Zulu are really great at expanding early on, because they got a special building that made it to where maintenance for cities was lowered, so you could actually expand your borders a lot faster. And so I would take advantage of this and just spread way out, like, really quick, just take over everybody. And so, like, I owned a whole continent by the time that they found me, because my friends all started on another continent, and I was, like, over here by myself somehow with a bunch of AI. It was just like a roll of the dice thing. So they finally discovered me, and they were like, wow, this whole continent is yellow. And I was like, yep. I had some people here. I had some friends, but I killed them. And they were like, oh, wow, okay. And so that was pretty much like a hands-down victory, because once you get to that size, I mean, nobody can keep up with you in terms of technology. And you just get way ahead. But Civ 5, like I say, they got rid of that, so that you can't expand like that. For example, you play as the Aztecs, and their starting unit, they have, like, one of the better starting units. Like their warriors are jaguars, and jaguars can move through the forests, and they're very good at defending and attacking and so on and so forth. But if you use that early advantage to expand really rapidly, then basically all you're going to do is you're just going to crash yourself because you like expand too fast, and then you wind up with massive sadness, and like everybody is sad. They all want you to die. Your own people want you to die. They're really upset because of how well you're making military gains. Oh, another weird thing too is they added city-states, and this was to replace the diplomacy thing. Oh, good. Please go by. Anyway, this was to replace the diplomacy thing. Is originally you had to rely on other players to vote you to be the winner, and that almost never happened. So what they did is they added city-states, and city-states are just like little, they're AI-controlled cities. They don't do anything except for annoy you, and they make a lot of requests, and if you give them tons of gold, then eventually they will vote you the diplomatic winner of the game. You have a diplomatic vote, and the city-states just go, yeah, this guy wins the game. So this creates a new frustrating mechanic where if somebody is being really nice to all the city-states, and frequently it's the AI, because the AI can cheat, and they can, like, you know, pay the city-states money while they also do other things. They're a little weird. You know, like, the AI will try to court all the city-states and just dumping gold on them, and so on and so forth. And what will happen is the AI will inevitably just win. Like, they just win. Like, they just get to the diplomatic thing, and they're like, oh, all the city-states vote me the winner. So what you have to do if that starts to happen is you have to go to war with the city-states, but the game punishes you super hard for doing that. You are considered like a severe warmonger. So if you go and you conquer these city-states so that they can't vote your enemies the diplomatic winner of the game, then like basically every other civ in the game will view you as a horrible villain, and they won't really want to do trade deals with you anymore. Pretty much you're forced into a war route. Like, you can't have diplomacy with people anymore. This is another thing I hate about Civ 5, is because the AI used to be really intuitive in Civ 4. Once you got the hang of understanding what they went for, it was like, you open borders with them, they like that, you know, we're friends, we have open borders. You start trading resources with them, they like that, you know, hey, we trade resources, we're friends. You know, you form a defensive pact with them, okay, we're friends, we have a defensive pact. You trade them technologies, okay, yeah, we're trading technologies, like, look at what we benefit from each other. You go to war together, you know, hey, mutual military conflict, we are friends. And so there was ways to build, like, really concrete relationships with very particular civs. Like, if you looked at someone and you were like, okay, yeah, that's on the other side of my enemy, and they've got some resources I like, I think that I can work with this civ. You would make friends with that AI, and together you would pretty much carve up a continent. And as long as, you know, your borders didn't touch, there was never a reason to fight each other. And it was a good system, but Civ 5 is just so clunky and so meta that there's really no reason to ever trust the AI or to ever really like them. They made it to where, like, international trade routes, they have international trade routes in Civ 5, where you set up these caravans and you tell them, like, go to this city and trade with them. And it brings back a ton of gold for you. And in fact, it's an absolutely crucial way to make money. And this is another thing they're trying to punish warfare, where if you conquer the city-states, you can't trade with the city-states. And then all the local cities will be pissed at you and they won't want to trade with you. They'll close off their borders and they won't, like, trade resources with you. And then eventually they'll declare war on them, and then you can't trade with them anymore. So you gotta go to war, and basically, you know, if you fight militarily in that game, then you can wind up being shut down from a lot of really important money-making things, and you just have to be completely self-sustaining. There's no sense of diplomacy. There's no sense of, like, you know, I'll scratch your back and you scratch mine, and we both hate Napoleon, so let's go to war together against Napoleon. Because going to war at all causes the AI to hate you. So, Civ 5, I dislike a lot of things about it. I talk very poorly on it. Standing alone, it's an alright game. Standing next to Civ 4, I think it's much worse. They did some things that are better. They have, like, a hex system where you move all your little troops around, and, like, catapults can fire 2 spaces, and melee units have to move and they attack 1 space. You know, so you set up all this, like, kind of a more strategic sort of thing, which I like. Civ 4 just had, like, unit stacks where, like, you know, you'd have 30 units sitting in a single stack, and you just take them and you throw them all at a city, and then bulldoze the city. This led to a lot of things where there was really no strategy or conflict. Basically, it was like the enemy would show up with, like, 50 troops, and you would have, like, 3 defending your city, and you'd just be like, well, this is all going downhill real quick, isn't it? So, yeah, the new hex system is an improvement. The graphics are prettier. Some of the religious stuff is neat in Civ 5. There's some goods. I think that there's more bad than good. There's more drawbacks than there are improvements in Civ 5, but Civ 5 is still a solid game. Just, you know, sorry to see some of the more complex mechanics go. But I think that they were trying to get more casual players involved. I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, though, I suppose that'll be it for today. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I will catch you all next time.